The sun had barely crested the edge of Willow Creek when James Walker rolled out of bed, already dreading the long day ahead. The air in the small room was cool, the old window unit chugging faintly, trying its best to push against the rising heat of another summer morning. Outside, birds chirped lazily in the oaks, but James didn't hear them. His mind was already on bills, repairs, and the strange clicking noise his truck had started making the night before. For James, mornings didn't start with peace, they started with pressure. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, then walked softly down the hall of the small two-bedroom bungalow he rented on Sycamore Street. One room was his, modest and cluttered with laundry and forgotten coffee mugs. The other belonged to Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, the light of his life, and the reason he got out of bed every morning. He peeked in and saw her curled up, clutching the worn-out teddy bear she named Toast. Her soft breaths came in rhythm, peaceful and sweet. For a brief second, James smiled. Lily's room was decorated with fairy lights, glitter drawings, and construction paper hearts that read #OneDad in crooked crayons. James didn't have much, his garage barely broke even, and child care wasn't cheap, but what he had, he gave her. Every dollar, every sleepless night, every second he spent caked in grease was for Lily. He never planned to be a single father, but when his wife passed away from cancer 4 years earlier, the plan didn't matter. Life had handed him the steering wheel, and there was no one else to drive. He fixed Lily's favorite pancakes, burnt on one side but smothered in syrup, just how she liked them, and helped her into her sparkly sneakers. She was talking excitedly about her ballet recital next week, about how her teacher said she was finally pointing her toes right. James smiled and nodded through her chatter, pulling her tangled hair into a ponytail that somehow still ended up sideways. She didn't care. She gave him a peanut buttery kiss on the cheek and skipped out the door. After dropping her off at dance class, James headed toward the garage. His shop, Walker Auto Repair, sat on the edge of Main Street, a brick and metal relic of a time when people still fixed cars themselves. The paint was chipped, the signage faded, but the garage was his. It had belonged to his father, and before that, his grandfather. James had learned how to rebuild carburetors before he was old enough to shave. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. He parked his beat-up Ford next to the service bay and pulled open the garage door. The air inside smelled like oil, rust, and steel. His tools were where he left them, and a few old invoices were taped to the counter. Another slow day, probably. Willow Creek wasn't exactly booming, and people weren't spending money unless they had to. James popped the hood on an old Chevy that had been sitting for 2 weeks, then wiped his hands on a rag. That's when he heard it, the unmistakable cough and sputter of an engine in distress. A car rolled to a stop out front, smoke curling from under its hood like a ghost with bad lungs. He stepped outside and blinked. There, idling awkwardly near the curb, was a 1967 Mustang Fastback. Cherry red. Chrome detailing. It was a dream car, beautiful, elegant, the kind of machine you'd see in a showroom or in a wealthy collector's garage. Definitely not something you'd expect to find choking on smoke in rural Willow Creek. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. James watched, curious. She looked like she didn't belong here. Tall, poised, and dressed in casual but clearly expensive jeans, a light cream blouse, and oversized sunglasses, she was more Manhattan than Main Street. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a high ponytail, and her boots were clean, too clean for the dirt roads of the county. She frowned at the car, then kicked the tire gently as if scolding a misbehaving child. James approached slowly. Looks like she's throwing a tantrum. The woman turned, startled. Excuse me? He pointed to the car. The Mustang. Overheating. Judging by the smoke and the smell, I'd guess a busted radiator hose or maybe a thermostat issue. The woman sighed. That bad? Could be worse. Mind if I take a look? She hesitated, then stepped aside. Be my guest. James popped the hood and winced. The engine was beautiful, clearly rebuilt with care and expensive parts, but it hadn't been maintained. A cracked hose, low coolant, and dust buildup told him it had been sitting too long. Maybe someone bought it for the aesthetic and forgot it needed care. Neglected beauty, James muttered. This car deserves better. The woman raised an eyebrow. You talk about cars like they're people. They've got personalities. Quirks. Tempers. You treat them right, they'll get you home. You don't, he gestured to the smoke. She crossed her arms. You're not wrong. I'm James, he said, extending a grease-stained hand. Eve, she replied, shaking it with a small smile. He glanced at her. Eve what? Just. Eve. James didn't press. She clearly wasn't from around here. Maybe she was passing through. Maybe running from something. Or maybe she just didn't want to explain herself. He respected that. He grabbed a few tools from the shop and got to work. For the next 40 minutes, he replaced the hose, added coolant, tightened a few bolts, and gave the engine a lecture about trust and reliability. Eve stood nearby, occasionally asking questions, mostly watching in silence. You always fix strangers' cars for free? She asked. I'm not fixing it for free, he said. I'm fixing it because you look like you needed help. Besides, you won't get far with it running like that. She studied him. So what do you get out of it? He wiped sweat from his forehead. A good deed for the day. Maybe some good karma. And an excuse not to work on that old Chevy inside. Eve laughed, a clear, genuine sound that caught James off guard. It wasn't the laugh of someone used to pleasantries. It was unguarded. Warm. I'll owe you, she said. You don't. I insist. James shrugged. Fine. You can owe me a cup of coffee if you're ever back in town. She smiled, but didn't say anything more. When he was finished, the Mustang started with a roar, smooth and powerful. James stepped back, satisfied. She'll run clean now. Just don't push her hard until you get a full inspection. Eve looked at him. You really know what you're doing. Been under hood since I could walk. She reached into her purse and pulled out a sleek white card, handing it to him. No company name, no title, just E. Morgan. Direct line. James turned it over. Blank. Mysterious. Eve smiled, slipping on her sunglasses. Sometimes it's best that way. She climbed into the Mustang, revved the engine, and gave him one last glance before driving off. The sound of her car echoed through the quiet street long after she disappeared. James stood there for a moment, staring at the empty road. Then he shook his head and went back inside. He didn't think about Eve for the rest of the day. Or rather, he tried not to. But her voice lingered, her laugh echoed. Something about her felt different. Not just wealthy or classy, but real. Disarmed. Like she was used to people wanting something from her, and was surprised when he didn't. That night, after Lily was asleep and the dishes were done, James sat down with a beer and stared at her card again. E. Morgan. He had no idea who she was, and honestly, he didn't care. He didn't fix her car for a reward or to chase a fantasy. He did it because that's what his father taught him to do. Help people when they need it. No strings. No games. He slipped the card into his wallet and went to bed. 3 weeks later, everything changed. It was a Monday when the call came. James was elbow-deep in an alternator when his cell phone buzzed. He wiped his hands and answered, expecting it to be Lily's school or a vendor with a bad connection. Instead, it was his bank manager. Mr. Walker, the woman said nervously, we need to confirm a series of large transactions. James frowned. What kind of large? There's been a transfer into your business account. 7 figures. Followed by payments applied to your debts, mortgage, and a deposit into a trust for your daughter. James blinked. Excuse me? It's all verified. Comes from a Morgan Global Holdings. He dropped the wrench. What? There's also a letter delivered to the shop. A courier's on the way. An hour later, the courier arrived. He handed James a sealed envelope with a silver wax stamp. Inside was a note written on heavy cream cardstock. Dear James. You didn't know me. You didn't ask for anything. You simply helped because it was right. That kind of integrity is rare in the world I live in. I fix empires the way you fix engines, but I've learned that all the power in the world doesn't mean much if you forget how to be kind. Thank you for reminding me. Please accept this gift, not as repayment, but as acknowledgement. You changed my day. I hope I've changed your life. If you ever want to work with people who value character more than titles, call me. Eve Morgan. CEO, Morgan Global. James stared at the letter. He thought of the Mustang. The mysterious woman. The laugh. The card. The simple name, Eve. Eve Morgan. Not just a stranger on the side of the road. A billionaire. One of the richest women in the country. And he'd treated her like a neighbor with car trouble. Because that's who she'd been that day. And now, everything was different.